All right, class. I forgot to hit record, so I get to do the lecture again. I have my own personal laptop here, so we shouldn't have any problems with the audio. I just I spaced out. So anyway, let me go ahead and it is recording. Let me do a screen share and let's do this real quick. Okay, now I'm at the end because I literally just finished the lecture, but now I'm going to re-record it. Let me go back to the beginning. It's a short lecture. Okay, we're going to be talking today about um, what employees owe to the company and what employers owe to the employees. So we're continuing that conversation from Monday. Byers and Stanberry discussed what employees owe their company, and these include loyalty to the organization, remaining loyal to the customers, maintaining financial integrity, and remaining ethical when offering criticism or engaging in whistleblowing. Now, financial integrity, you don't want to take anything that isn't yours. So the company, they own everything there. Don't take computers. I don't take pens. I don't take post-it notes. If I use a post-it note for a personal message, okay, that's not a big deal. But I'm not going to take a pack of post-it notes with me. Um, Whistleblowing is an interesting concept. It actually comes from the Civil War in the 1800s. The Union, the northern states, they hired people, organizations, businesses to make munitions and cannons and guns and supplies and materials and uniforms. And they were having people that weren't doing good work. So they put a law on the books to allow for whistleblowing. So originally, whistleblowing was something that you could only do when working for for a company that had a government contract. Um, Nowadays, if I work for a company, they may not have a government contract, but there are regulatory bodies like the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, that oversee aspects of business. So if the company is doing illegal things, the right way to blow the whistle is I contact the appropriate regulatory body, the SEC, FDA, whatever it might be, and I file a whistleblower complaint with them. That is the right way to do it. The wrong way is to go on social media and blab about it, or to contact a newspaper and blab about it. That's not legally protected whistleblowing, and that can get you in trouble. So if you find yourself in a situation where you need to engage in whistleblowing, make sure you do it properly and you go through the proper governmental agencies to do this. Loyalty to the employer. Byers and Stanberry pointed out that many employees never signed a contract detailing the duties and loyalty that was expected of them by their employer. However, the law has a series of common law provisions that govern these very issues. Okay, so common law is kind of an interesting thing. It's not a law in the books, but it's considered just common law. So you can be held liable for it. For instance, if I had a girlfriend and she moved in with me and I put her on my bank account, I put her on my cell phone plan, we are now technically common law married. So if we break up, she could demand a divorce and get half of my stuff. So common law governs things like that. Now, a lot of times we may not know what common law or common laws are governing us, and we need to do a little research and find out if something falls under common law because then we expose ourselves legally. So we have to be careful. Duty of loyalty requires that employees conduct their tasks in a way that is in the business's and or employer's best interests. And of course, this common law provision, it is found in all 50 US states. I do not know about international jurisdictions. My uh, business law classes, my corporate law classes were all pertaining to US governance, US jurisdictions. And so I don't know about every jurisdiction. I don't know about maybe your country if you're from a foreign country. Duty of loyalty refers to how an employee must act in good faith, meaning that they act in ways that benefit the business and or employer. Byers and Stanberry stated, the duty of loyalty means an employee is obligated to render loyal and faithful service to the employer, to act with good faith and not compete with, but rather advance the employer's interests. This implies that the employee will have that the employee will not act in ways that benefit their own personal agenda or someone else's agenda, but rather only the agenda of the employer. Duty of loyalty even prohibits employees from obtaining additional employment unless it has been approved by their employer. Now, this may not seem fair, but it is designed to protect the employer from paying staff with selfish motives or providing service to a competitor. This is to reduce any conflicts of interest. I have to take the second instance of that line off of here before I post this. So I work for Cleary University. If I want to work for another school, I need to clear it with them first. Now, as an adjunct, there's no problem with me getting another adjunct position somewhere. But if I was an associate professor here, then if I was going to get a position as an associate professor at another school, I have to get it approved beforehand because one company shouldn't benefit from another company's training. If the school puts me through special training to do a specific task, they spend money, they pay for me to get this done. Now I take this skill and I go and I get a second job somewhere else using that certification or that skill that this company just paid for me to get. This company benefits while this company doesn't. And so I actually wind up almost like stealing from them. So let's say I finish my time as a professor, I terminate my position. Now I go work somewhere else. That schooling, the education, that experience follows me and I get the benefit from it after that. But while I'm with the organization that actually puts me through that training, I'm literally bound to them. If they approve me to go work for someone else, great. If not, then I better not. Now, we live in an economy where a lot of people have to have multiple jobs. Now, if you have a job with, let's say, in manufacturing, and you go get a part-time job in retail, there really shouldn't ever be any conflict of interest developing there. But still, it's best to talk to your supervisor first before you go and do that, or your HR department. But if I'm in manufacturing and I get a second job at another manufacturing plant that is one of our competitors, they might have problems with it because, as you're going to see, they don't want me giving out proprietary company information to the competitors. Employees should never make work decisions to further their own goals. I shouldn't do things here at Cleary University as a professor that make my goals come to fruition and neglect the school's goals. Now, thankfully, my goals coincide with the school's goals, so I don't really ever have to worry about that. I like teaching. They want me to teach, therefore we're doing good. Also in the process, I don't talk bad about the school. When I'm teaching my students, I want them to see the good things about Cleary. So I lift Cleary up. I'm not going to promote other schools. I'm not going to tell you you should go to other schools. I'm going to be, yes, Cleary's the way to go. I work here. They pay for me to be loyal. They do that in the regular pay that they give me to do this job. They expect my loyalty. So I have no problem giving it. Employees must never deal with or make agreements with any clients, customers, suppliers, or vendors for their own personal gain. When I was in retail, I had to keep a client list. I used to sell men's suits. And you would keep down their birth date, their contact information, their sizes, what they're looking for, what they like, the colors, all these things. And when I would get something in, I would call them up and let them know what I had. All right. That was good. That's good customer service. But I never, ever would take that contact information over when I worked for another place. I would leave that contact book with this business. And if I quit this business, I terminate and I go and I get employed at another place selling suits, I'm going to start my contact list all over again because that's the ethical thing to do. It is important to point out that the level of duty of loyalty is directly related to the level of trust given to the employee by the employer. And the textbook notes that this includes confidentiality and fiduciary duty. Confidentiality, that's keeping intellectual property and the proprietary secrets and the inner workings of the company, keeping it quiet. The fiduciary duty, that's the money. That's things dealing with value. And so I don't want to steal from the company because that is, one, unethical, and two, it is illegal. So I have to maintain good accounting records. I have to maintain good financial records, everything, managing money. I do it all in the up and up because this money does not belong to me. If I'm a quarter short for a pack of gum or a drink or a soda or something, I don't go to the register and take out a quarter. I just am without that quarter. Okay. So the till at the job is not a place for you to get change. You already know that. I'm just saying this is what we're talking about with fiduciary duty. Also, it includes like making wise decisions that benefit the company. So if I'm working at a company and I'm involved in doing investments or procurement, I'm going to make decisions that benefit the company, not waste their money. Since the duty of loyalty is under common law, there is no codified definition that I can give you. The duty of loyalty, the concept, it has changed with each generation in the workplace. Ultimately, the definition has to do with how the employee places the needs and desires of the employer in their levels of importance. When I work for a place, I have my personal goals, my personal needs, my personal ongoings, but I separate that from the company because I'm here to work and get the paycheck that I need. And if you take organizational behavior, that's called the expectancy theory of motivation. I work for the paycheck. I'm not working for other benefits. I'm working for the paycheck. And I'm going to take that. And now in return, I'm going to do the job they hired me to do. I'm not going to cause dissension. I'm not going to go blab about everything that's going on. I'm not going to make the company look bad in the public eye. And I'm going to be honest. I'm going to maintain their funds properly. Loyalty, however, it is a two-way street. It has to be both from the employee to the employer and from the employer to the employee. So, what does this look like in an at-will employment jurisdiction? The textbook pointed out that the at-will employment system is normally designed to benefit the employer. Employees who feel respected and trusted by their employer tend to offer a higher level of loyalty. Here's an example. We all know Dean Kelly. Okay. As an adjunct, I have a working relationship with her. I stop by and I see her at least once a week. I communicate, and there's a sense of trust. I can go talk about important things in the classroom. I can be transparent, and I can trust that I can do this. And likewise, when she gives feedback, I have this trust that it's going to come from a good place, and it's bidirectional, and that's a positive thing. Now, money can change loyalty. The textbook noted that the duty of loyalty tends to shift when money is brought into the discussion. If there's money involved, your loyalty level automatically starts to increase because of that fiduciary component. In other words, when staff witnesses senior leaders quitting their jobs to work for a competitor to earn more income, they often do the same. So, what should happen? If I see staff quitting and leaving, they have a right to quit, leave, and go work somewhere else. But one, if they got the job before they quit this job, there could be some questions of ethicality. Also, if they're all leaving to go make money elsewhere and I go make money elsewhere, who else is going to work here? This can create a problem from an ethical point of view. While it's not necessarily illegal, ethically, it does pose some issues. So we witness this both in the business and sports sector. In past days, people had a high level of loyalty and remained with the same company for their entire career. Nowadays, employees tend to be more mobile. They change jobs every couple of years. So we don't have the system where you go work for one company for 20 or 30 years and retire, get a gold watch, and then enjoy the beaches of Hawaii. Some people still do that, but most don't. And it's not that the new system is bad or worse, it's just different. We need to remember if we're only at a place for several years, we've got loyalty while we're at that place. Let's be loyal. And there's some things, as you're going to see in a few minutes, even after we leave that job, we still cannot divulge. Okay, it depends on the NDAs, the NCAs, and different things like that. Duty of confidentiality. Byers and Stanberry defined the duty of confidentiality as keeping company secrets from competitors. This includes trade secrets. It helps to ensure the organization's competitive advantage. This can be legally enforced through non-disclosure agreements, and sometimes a confidentiality clause is included in the employment contract. Kind of an example. When I was in the Army, I was in military intelligence, and I had a security clearance. So things that I learned under that clearance that were covered under that clearance level, I still to this day can't talk about. And that's fine. I knew what I was getting into. So it was kind of like an NDA in the sense of there was an agreement. I'm going to be exposed to information that I can't talk about. The same thing happens in civilian sectors. If I'm working in an R&D lab and I'm developing new products and we have an innovative breakthrough compound, I need to remember not to go divulging that. Now, we're going to get a little more specifics in a minute as far as duration on that. Duty of confidentiality, one example that the textbook deals with are copyrights, and these belong to the employer even for the employee's work. If you do work for the company, you're getting paid for it. You're either getting paid for it or you're getting paid for it and you're using company resources. Whatever you develop belongs to that company. So a while back, I wrote some curriculum for Clear University for a seminar they wanted to do. I did this as a subject matter expert. The finished work they own. I don't. I can never print it. I can't use it. It belongs to them. And I know that, and I'm fine with that. Now, the concepts that are used in there, things like leadership styles and things like that, this doesn't belong to them, but my representation of it does. The way I wrote it down does. So I can go write other books and other material about the same concepts and theories and applications. I just can't use the same literal thing that I wrote for Cleary. And another example, the incandescent light bulb was not invented by Thomas Edison. An employee that worked for him developed it. And Thomas Edison took that and said, well, you did it here. Now it belongs to the company. Well, okay, that's fine. That's legal and ethical. The thing that Edison did that I don't agree with ethically is he took credit for it versus if I'm a company and you come up with an idea that now belongs to me, I can easily say my employee, John Doe or Jane Doe, developed it for our company. It belongs to our company, and I give you the credit of having come up with it, but we own it. That's legal and ethical. But just to take it and then say, I did it, that's not ethical. However, unfortunately, it's a gray area of the law and it's not necessarily illegal. So whatever you do for your job belongs to them. If you do a project on a computer for them, it belongs to them. So when you go home, leave your work computer aside. And if you're working on writing or studying or doing whatever you're doing, use your personal equipment. This way, it's on your time and on your device using your resources. This way, you can put a copyright, a trademark, or patent on it. Duty of confidentiality. There are ways to protect the organization's secrets, and these include the non-disclosure agreements, non-compete agreements. These are designed to protect the organization's intellectual property. Also includes trademarks and patents and things like that, copyrights. Byers and Stanberry presented the ethical question that surrounds this particular discussion. Some U.S. jurisdictions, legally, such as California, have enacted legislation voiding non-compete agreements in a way to limit the duration of these agreements. So the question revolves around when the duty of confidentiality ceases. That's the question. Is it in perpetuity for all time? Or is there a window, a 2-year window, a 3-year window? When I worked for the IRS, I was prohibited from working for any tax preparation service for 3 years. Couldn't do it, illegal. Because what I had learned at the IRS would actually affect my ability to work in the tax preparation industry. It would give me too much of an advantage, and it would also be, I would have too much knowledge about what the IRS does with the forms, so I couldn't actually bring that together. I had to remain confidential when it came to things about the IRS. And this just makes sense. So what information is the employee obligated to protect after they leave the organization? Well, I would say anything that is intellectual property, anything that is a trade secret, anything that's proprietary information, recipes, chemical combinations, procedures, policies. In other words, just don't talk about a lot of the nuts and bolts and the things that go on at your prior company. That's a good practice. So if I now go and get a job at a different company and I'm talking either smack about my old boss and my old company, or I'm sharing secrets, my new company isn't going to trust me. So it's just not wise. California made the change to its legislation due to the mobility found in the workforce of today. Some employees are still limited from working for for a competitor while they are employed by the organization. So um, I have got to get permission to go get a second job. Okay, that's typically as an adjunct professor, you're usually and you learn real quick that your school allows for you to get another position as an adjunct somewhere else. But if I was in, let's say, an associate professor, for me to go get another position at another school as an associate professor would be a conflict of interest. One, I would have to get clearance to do it, and two, I may not be allowed to because it is literally the same position. Um, so would it be ethical to expect a scientist working in an organization's R&D department to maintain confidentiality when it comes to innovative and cutting-edge chemical compounds? Of course. Of course it would. They'd be signing an NDA, there'd be a non-compete clause and all that. The textbook mentioned that a non-solicitation clause protects an organization from having its employees take its customer base to a new firm. So if I'm in accounts, I'm an account manager or whatever it might be, I leave this job and I go work for a competitor, I am prohibited from taking my client list with me. And that just makes sense because that's the profit that this company is making. That's their clients. That's their source of income. For me to strip that from them removes their ability to make that money. If I go start a business in the same industry, I can't take my clients with me. However, if my clients are in LinkedIn and they see that I stopped working for this company and that I started a business, or I'm working for a new company, they can choose to move their business over with me. But I cannot take the client list with me and instigate that and get that process started. That is unethical and illegal. This is just a slide showing you some of the major points of each of these things here. You have the non-compete clause, the non-solicitation of customers, and you have the confidentiality non-disclosure clause. So this is in your textbook. I would familiarize myself, if I were you, with it. The non-disparagement clause. The textbook noted that a non-disparagement clause prohibits an employee defaming or deliberately running down the reputation of a former employer. In other words, a person cannot leave their employer and go to work for a competitor and make all these disparaging comments to ruin their former organization's reputation. That is illegal. Happens a lot, but it's not good to do. It's not ethical, and it's not really legal in a lot of places. Employees held under such prohibitions would have signed a non-disparagement clause when they signed their employment contract. So if you haven't signed an employment contract and there's no non-disparagement clause that you're aware of, you're probably not going to be held legally liable for it. It's still not ethical. If I hire somebody and they're talking smack about their old company, I'm not going to trust them as much. That is the lecture. So if you have any questions, be sure to send me an email. I have recorded this. I will be publishing it before long. I thank you very much for joining me today. See you all on Monday.